I stood frozen in the daycare parking lot, staring at my phone screen like it might explode in my hands. The words blurred and sharpened as my brain tried to make sense of what I was reading. Moving to China with Claire. I emptied our savings. Good luck paying rent. My husband Trevor had just destroyed our entire life in a single text message. Through the window I could see our 4-year-old daughter Penny inside, laughing with another little girl as they built something with colourful blocks. Her pigtails bounced as she moved, completely unaware that her father had just abandoned her. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of supporting him through job changes, through his moods, through everything. And this was how it ended? A text message while I picked up our daughter from daycare. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Trevor. Don't bother calling. I'm already at the airport. You always held me back anyway. Claire believes in me. Something cold settled in my chest. Not sadness yet. That would come later. Right now it was pure shock mixed with rising panic. Our savings. He said he emptied our savings. With trembling fingers, I opened our banking app. My stomach dropped straight through the ground. The account showed $247.18. Just yesterday it had $42,000. Money we'd saved for years. Money for Penny's future, for emergencies, for the down payment on a house we'd been planning to buy. All gone. I checked again, hoping I'd made a mistake, hoping the app was glitching. But no, $247.18 was all that remained. Rent was due in 5 days. I had maybe $180 in my personal checking account from my last paycheck. I was a nurse. I made decent money, but not enough to cover everything Trevor's betrayal just dumped on me. How could he do this? How could he steal from his own daughter? Inside the daycare, Penny looked up and spotted me through the window. Her whole face lit up like I was the best thing in the world. She waved enthusiastically, her small hand opening and closing in that way little kids wave. I forced myself to wave back, forced my face into something that might look like a smile. My phone buzzed a third time. I wanted to throw it across the parking lot. You'll be fine. You always figure things out. Tell Penny I'll send her a postcard from Shanghai. A postcard. He was going to send his daughter a postcard after abandoning her and stealing her future. Something my mother-in-law Dorothy said 6 months ago suddenly crashed into my memory like a lightning bolt. We'd been sitting in the hospital cafeteria where I worked. Dorothy had been stirring her coffee for a long time without drinking it, clearly working up to something difficult. "Amy, honey," she'd finally said, her weathered hands wrapped around the cup, "I need to talk to you about something sensitive." I'd immediately tensed. Dorothy wasn't the type to create drama without reason. She was practical, smart, and fiercely protective of the people she loved. "I saw something at Trevor's company party last week that worried me," she continued carefully. "That woman Claire from his office. The way she was touching his arm, laughing at everything he said, and the way he was responding." I'd started to defend Trevor immediately. They're just co-workers, Dorothy. Trevor loves me." But Dorothy had held up her hand. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm being a paranoid old woman. But Amy, I've seen this before. Years ago, before my husband got sick, a woman tried this exact thing with him." "What are you suggesting?" I'd asked, feeling defensive and uncomfortable. I'm suggesting we protect you and Penny, regardless of what Trevor does or doesn't do. Dorothy's blue eyes had been steady, serious. I think we should open a separate savings account, just in your name. We transfer money there slowly, bit by bit, so Trevor doesn't notice. Think of it as insurance. I'd resisted at first. It felt like betraying Trevor, like expecting him to fail, but Dorothy had been persistent. If I'm wrong, wonderful, you'll have extra savings and no one gets hurt. But if I'm right... She'd trailed off, letting me imagine the worst. Finally, I'd agreed. It felt silly and paranoid, but Dorothy had lived longer than me and seen more of life's ugly sides. We opened an account at a completely different bank. Over 6 months, I'd transferred about $23,000 into it, half of everything we'd been saving. Trevor never noticed. He barely looked at our bank statements. Standing in that parking lot, phone in hand, world crumbling around me, I realized Dorothy had just saved my life. Trevor had emptied our main savings account, but he had no idea about the secret one. He thought he'd left me with nothing. He'd bragged about it in his text, probably feeling powerful and in control. But I had $23,000 he didn't know existed. My hands were still shaking, but now it wasn't just from shock, as it was from something else, something that felt like the beginning of rage. I took a deep breath and typed out a response to Trevor's cruel messages. Thanks for letting me know. That's all I sent. Short, calm, giving nothing away. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe I was helpless and desperate. Inside the daycare, Penny had gone back to playing, secure in the knowledge that her mama was there to pick her up like always. I needed to call Dorothy, right now. My mother-in-law answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. Amy? Her voice was tense. What's wrong? My throat tightened. You were right about everything. There was a pause. Then Dorothy's voice came back, harder than steel. Tell me what happened. I explained it all. The texts, the empty account, Trevor at the airport heading to China with Claire. When I finished, Dorothy was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Get Penny and come to my house right now, she said. Her voice had changed into something I'd never quite heard before. It reminded me of a general preparing for war. Don't go home. Don't talk to anyone else. Just come straight here. Dorothy, what are we going to do? We're going to fix this, she said simply. Trevor thinks he's so clever stealing from his own family, but he forgot something important. What's that? He forgot that I raised him. I know exactly how he thinks, and I've been preparing for this possibility since the day I saw that woman Claire look at my son like he was a meal ticket. Despite everything, despite the devastation of the last 10 minutes, I felt the smallest spark of hope. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Drive carefully. And Amy? Yes? We're going to make sure he regrets this decision for the rest of his life. Dorothy hung up, and I walked into the daycare to collect my daughter, forcing my face into a calm mask. Mama! Penny crashed into my legs with a hug. Look what I made! She held up a drawing of our family, stick figures holding hands. She'd drawn 3 people, me, her, and someone labelled Grandma. Trevor wasn't in the picture. 6 months ago, I'd watched my son Trevor at his company party and felt my stomach twist into knots. I'm Dorothy, and I've spent 68 years on this earth learning to trust my instincts. That night, every single one of them was screaming danger. The party was at some fancy restaurant downtown. Amy couldn't make it because she was working a double shift at the hospital. And so Trevor had asked me to come along. He didn't like attending work events alone. I should have known right then something was off. A married man shouldn't need his mother as a date to a party. I was standing near the appetizer table, trying to figure out what exactly was on those little crackers, when I heard her laugh. It was too loud, too performed, like she was on a stage instead of at a casual work gathering. I looked up and saw her for the first time. Claire. She was younger than Trevor, maybe late 20s, wearing a red dress that looked expensive. But it wasn't her appearance that bothered me. It was the way she was standing next to my son, too close. Her hand rested on his arm while she laughed at something he'd said. Her fingers squeezed his bicep, slightly like she was testing the firmness of fruit at a grocery store. And Trevor. My son was eating it up like candy. His chest was puffed out. He had that stupid grin on his face that he used to get as a teenager when girls paid attention to him. He was leaning toward her, his body language completely open and receptive. I felt sick. I knew that look. I'd seen it before years ago on my own husband's face. My husband Gerald had been a good man mostly, but about 30 years back, before he got sick, a woman from his office had tried something similar. Touching his arm, laughing too hard at his jokes, making him feel special and important. Gerald had been tempted. I saw it happening right in front of me. He started working late more often, mentioning her name in conversations, comparing me to her in subtle ways. I'd caught it early and shut it down hard, not by yelling or making scenes, but by being smarter. I'd shown up at his office unexpectedly, made friends with his co-workers, made it clear that I existed and wasn't going anywhere. The other woman had backed off when she realized Gerald wasn't an easy target after all. But watching Trevor with Claire, I realized my son didn't have the same strength his father had. Trevor had always been weak in certain ways. He needed constant validation, constant praise. He'd been like that since childhood. When he was 10, he'd had a teacher who criticized his artwork. Instead of trying harder, Trevor had simply quit art class altogether and told everyone art was stupid anyway. When he was 17, a girl had rejected him for prom. He'd moped for weeks, saying she'd made a huge mistake and would regret it. He never handled criticism well. He never handled being ordinary well. And right now Claire was making him feel extraordinary. I watched them for another 20 minutes. Every time Trevor tried to step away, Claire found a reason to pull him back into conversation. She touched him constantly, his arm, his shoulder, once even brushing something imaginary off his jacket. My son was too foolish to see what was happening. He thought this beautiful younger woman genuinely found him fascinating. I knew better. Women like Claire didn't flirt with married men at work parties because they'd found true love. They did it because they wanted something: money, status, a green card, an escape from their own lives. Something. When Trevor finally came over to check on me, his face was flushed and happy. "Having fun, Mom?" he asked. Who's your friend in the red dress?" I kept my voice casual. "Oh, that's Claire. She just started in our department 3 months ago. She's really smart and she's been asking me for advice on all her projects. She says I'm the best mentor she's ever had." the best mentor she's ever had. I nearly choked on my wine. That's nice, honey. Does Amy know about her? Trevor's expression flickered for just a second. What do you mean? Claire's just a co-worker. Of course, I said smoothly. I just meant, does Amy know you have such a helpful new team member? I've probably mentioned her, Trevor said, but his eyes shifted away. That meant no. He definitely hadn't mentioned her. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Claire's hand on my son's arm, kept seeing that stupid, proud expression on Trevor's face. At around 3 in the morning, I got out of bed and made myself tea. I sat at my kitchen table and thought about what to do. I could talk to Trevor directly, but that would just make him defensive. He'd accuse me of not trusting him, of being paranoid, of treating him like a child. I could tell Amy, but she'd probably do the same thing, confront Trevor, and he'd deny everything, because technically he hadn't done anything wrong yet. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to protect Amy and Penny without relying on Trevor to make the right choices. The next morning I called Amy and asked her to meet me for coffee at the hospital cafeteria during her lunch break. She arrived looking tired. Nursing shifts were brutal and she'd been working extra hours to help build up their savings faster. Meanwhile, my son was at work letting some woman hang all over him. I stirred my coffee for a long time, trying to find the right words. This was delicate. If I came on too strong, Amy would defend Trevor out of loyalty. Amy, honey, I finally started. I need to talk to you about something sensitive. She looked up, concerned. Is everything okay? Are you feeling all right? I'm fine, it's not about me. I took a breath. I saw something at Trevor's company party last week that worried me. I explained what I'd observed, being careful to stick to facts rather than interpretations. I described Claire's behaviour, Trevor's responses, the way he'd failed to mention her to Amy. Amy's face went through several emotions: surprise, defensiveness, worry, then something like embarrassment. They're just co-workers, Dorothy, she said, but her voice wasn't quite convinced. Trevor loves me. I'm sure he does, I said gently. But Amy, I've lived a long time. I've seen good men make terrible decisions because someone made them feel special at exactly the right moment. I told her about Gerald and the woman from his office, how close I'd come to losing my marriage. I'm not saying Trevor will definitely do something wrong, I continued. Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe I'm being a paranoid old woman. But I think we should protect you and Penny regardless. Protect us how? Amy asked quietly. Open a separate savings account, just in your name. Transfer money there slowly, bit by bit, without telling Trevor. Amy looked shocked. That feels like betraying him. Is it betrayal to make sure his daughter has security? I challenged. If Trevor is loyal and faithful, he'll never know about it and no harm is done. But if something happens, you'll have a safety net. Amy struggled with this. I could see it on her face. She loved my son, wanted to believe the best of him. Just think about it, I said. 2 days later, Amy called me. Okay, she said quietly. Let's open the account. We met at a bank across town, somewhere Trevor would never randomly go. We opened an account in only Amy's name with me listed as a backup contact in case of emergencies. Amy started transferring money carefully. 500 here, 800 there, 1,000 when they got a tax refund. always amounts that wouldn't trigger Trevor's attention. Over 6 months, we built up that secret account to $23,000. But I did something else too. Something I didn't tell Amy about because I didn't want to scare her. I called my old friend Patricia, who worked at the bank where Trevor and Amy kept their main savings account. Patricia and I went back 40 years to when we both worked at an accounting firm downtown. "Patricia, I need a favour," I'd said over lunch one day. "And you can say no if it makes you uncomfortable." "What kind of favour?" Patricia had asked, eyebrows raised. "My son has an account at your bank. I'm worried he might do something stupid with the money. If there's ever a large transaction, any big withdrawal or transfer, can you call me?" Patricia had studied my face. "Dorothy, you know I could get in trouble for that." "I know. That's why I'm asking as a favour, not as something official. You don't have to tell me details. Just a heads up if something significant happens." Patricia had agreed reluctantly, and yesterday she'd called me. "Dorothy," she'd said, her voice tight, "your son just transferred $41,752 out of his savings account, emptied it completely except for what the bank requires to keep it open." My blood had turned to ice. "When?" "About 2 hours ago, 3:15 this afternoon." I'd thanked Patricia and immediately started making preparations. I called the other bank, the one where Amy's secret account was held. Within an hour, I'd transferred all that money into a brand new account at a third bank, one with only my name on it temporarily until I could add Amy's. I wanted to make absolutely sure Trevor couldn't somehow discover it and steal that money too. Then I'd waited for Amy's call, knowing it would come. When my phone finally rang and I heard Amy's shaking voice say, "You were right about everything," I felt no satisfaction, just cold burning anger at my son for being so stupid and selfish. "Get Penny and come to my house right now," I told her. "Don't go home, don't talk to anyone else, just come straight here." "Dorothy, what are we going to do?" I looked at my laptop screen at the bank accounts I had access to, at the documentation I'd been quietly collecting for 6 months. "We're going to fix this," I said. "Trevor thinks he's so clever stealing from his own family, but he forgot something important." "What's that?" "He forgot that I raised him. I know exactly how he thinks." I hung up and immediately got to work. First, I called the bank where Trevor had stolen the money from. I explained that I was calling on behalf of Amy, whose name was also on the account, and that she had not authorized a transfer of over $40,000. The bank representative was sympathetic, but explained that since Trevor's name was on the account too, he had legal right to withdraw funds. "Even if it leaves his wife and child with nothing?" I asked coldly. "I'm sorry, Mom, that's a legal issue, not a banking issue." Fine. Legal issues I could work with. I called a lawyer I'd used when Gerald died, a sharp man named Bernard who specialized in family law. "Dorothy," he greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you?" "My daughter-in-law needs a divorce lawyer. Fast. And we need to file a restraining order." I explained the situation. Bernard listened without interrupting. Get Amy to my office tomorrow morning," he said when I finished. "Bring all the documentation you have, bank statements, text messages, everything." "We'll be there," I promised. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have, but I didn't care. I called Trevor's credit card companies and reported the cards as potentially stolen. I had his account numbers from old statements he'd left at my house. I explained that my son was travelling internationally and had mentioned his wallet might have been taken, and I was calling on his behalf to protect his accounts. 2 of the 3 companies immediately froze his cards pending verification. By the time I was done, Trevor would land in China with almost no money and no access to credit. Amy and Penny arrived at my house 45 minutes after my phone call. Penny ran to me for a hug, completely unaware that her father had just destroyed her family. Amy looked like she'd been crying but was holding it together for her daughter's sake. I made tea and settled Penny in the corner with some colouring books and crayons I kept for her visits. Then I sat Amy down and explained everything I'd done. Her face went pale. "Dorothy, is this legal?" "Everything I did was to protect you," I said firmly. "And yes, it's legal. You're his wife. You have every right to protect your joint assets and report suspicious activity. But freezing his credit cards? I reported them as potentially compromised. The companies made their own decisions." I met her eyes. "Amy, he abandoned you and Penny. He stole money that was meant to secure your daughter's future. This isn't the time to play fair." Amy was quiet for a long moment, looking at Penny colouring peacefully in the corner. "You're right," she finally whispered. "He made his choice." "Yes, he did," I agreed. "Now we make ours." Trevor stepped off the plane in Shanghai feeling like a completely new man. The flight had been long, but Claire had kept him entertained the whole time. She'd talked about her family's business empire, the mansion they'd live in, the servants who would cater to their every need. "My uncle owns 3 electronics factories," she'd said, squeezing his hand. "He's always looking for smart American businessmen to help manage operations. You'll probably make twice what you made back home." Trevor had smiled, imagining himself as some kind of international executive. Finally, people would see his real potential. Finally, he'd be appreciated for who he truly was. Amy had never understood him. She was always worried about boring things like bills and savings accounts and being practical. She never encouraged his dreams, never made him feel special. But Claire did. Claire told him he was brilliant, that he was wasted in his old job, that he deserved so much more. "Don't you feel guilty?" she'd asked during the flight. "About your daughter?" Trevor had shifted uncomfortably. He did feel a small twist in his chest when he thought about Penny. But Claire had convinced him this was actually good for everyone. "Penny will be fine," he'd said, repeating what Claire had told him. "Kids are resilient, and when we're established here, maybe she can come visit. Amy was holding me back from providing a really amazing life for my family." Claire had smiled and kissed his cheek. "Exactly. You're thinking long-term, that's what smart men do." Now, walking through the massive Shanghai airport, Trevor felt energized despite the exhaustion. Everything was in Chinese characters he couldn't read. People rushed past, speaking a language he didn't understand, but it felt exciting like an adventure. "Let me just check our account balance," Trevor said as they approached the exit. "I need to see how much cash we should convert to yuan." Claire was checking her phone, texting someone rapidly in Chinese. She said absently. Trevor spotted an ATM near the baggage claim area. His heart was racing with excitement. $41,000 was sitting in his account. That would convert to almost 300,000 yuan. They were set for months while he found that executive position Claire had promised. He inserted his card and selected English from the language menu. He entered his PIN and selected Check Balance. The screen loaded for a moment, then numbers appeared. Trevor's brain stopped working properly. He stared at the screen, certain he was reading it wrong. $3,247.18. That couldn't be right. He'd transferred $41,752 just yesterday morning before leaving for the airport. He'd checked it 3 times to make sure it went through properly. His hands started sweating. He hit the button to check again. $3,247.18. The same number appeared. His stomach dropped like he'd just fallen off a building. No, he muttered, checking a 3rd time. Still $3,247.18. How was this possible? Where did the money go? He tried to access his transaction history, but the ATM wouldn't show details for international accounts. He needed to call the bank. Trevor pulled out his phone and dialed his bank's customer service number with shaking fingers. "We're sorry, but your call cannot be completed as dialed." His American phone plan didn't work internationally. He'd meant to set up international service but forgot in all the excitement of running away with Claire. "Is something wrong?" Claire had walked over, looking at him with concern. "The money," Trevor said, his voice cracking. "It's gone. The account only shows $3,000. Claire's expression changed instantly. The warmth drained from her face like water down a sink. "What do you mean, gone?" Her voice had gone sharp. "You told me you had $45,000. "I did. I transferred it yesterday. I don't understand what happened." Trevor was starting to panic now, a real fear creeping up his spine. Claire pulled out her phone and opened a calculator. $3,000 is only about 22,000 yuan. "That's nothing, Trevor. That won't last a month in Shanghai." "There must be a mistake," Trevor insisted. "The bank must have made an error. I just need to call them and sort it out." "How are you going to call them? Your phone doesn't work here." "I'll find Wi-Fi somewhere. There has to be free Wi-Fi in the city." Claire was already texting again, her fingers flying over her phone screen. Her whole body language had changed. She'd moved away from him, putting physical distance between them. "Claire, it'll be okay," Trevor said desperately. "We'll figure this out." She ignored him, focused on her phone. She was speaking to someone in rapid Chinese, her voice getting louder and more agitated. Trevor stood there in the middle of the Shanghai airport, suddenly feeling very small and very far from home. Other travelers flowed around him like water around a rock. Everyone seemed to know where they were going except him. Claire ended her call and turned back to him. Her face was completely cold now, nothing like the warm, flirtatious woman from the plane. "I just talked to my cousin," she said flatly. "The one I told you about who works in manufacturing." "Okay, that's good, right? Maybe he can help us. He can get you a job at an electronics factory. Assembly line work. It pays about 4,000 yuan per month." Trevor did the math in his head. That was barely $600 a month. "Assembly line? But you said your uncle needed managers." Executives. "That was when you had money to invest," Claire snapped. "My family doesn't help broke foreigners who can't even keep track of their bank accounts." The words hit Trevor like a physical slap. "I thought you said your family was wealthy, that they'd help us get started." Claire laughed, but it wasn't a nice sound. My family is wealthy, but they're not stupid. They help people who can contribute something. What can you contribute with $3,000? But you said you loved me, Trevor whispered. He could hear how pathetic he sounded, but couldn't stop himself. I said you had potential, Claire corrected coldly. With $45,000, you had potential. With $3,000. She looked him up and down with disgust. Oh, you're just another broke foreigner. Trevor felt like the ground was disappearing beneath his feet. What about the mansion, the life you promised? That was contingent on you actually having the money you claimed to have. Claire was already picking up her suitcase. My cousin says the factory provides dormitory housing, shared rooms with 5 other workers. It's not much, but it's better than being homeless. Shared dormitory? Trevor couldn't process this. Just an hour ago, he'd been imagining himself as an international businessman. Now he was facing assembly line work and a bunk bed. Unless you have a better option, Claire challenged. Trevor didn't. He didn't have anywhere else to go, anyone else to call. He'd burned every bridge behind him. I need to try calling my bank, he said desperately. There has to be an explanation. Good luck with that. Claire was walking toward the exit now. I'm going to my cousin's apartment. Here's the address of the factory. She thrust a piece of paper at him with Chinese characters he couldn't read. Wait, I can't read this, Trevor called after her. Show it to a taxi driver, Claire said without turning around. And Trevor, don't call me again, this was a mistake. She disappeared into the crowd of travellers, leaving Trevor standing alone with his suitcase and his shattered dreams. He looked at the paper in his hand, at the incomprehensible characters. He looked at his phone that didn't work. He thought about his ATM card that showed $3,247 instead of the fortune he had counted on. For the first time since this whole thing started, Trevor thought about Penny. Only he pictured her little face, the way she'd run to him yelling, "Papa," when he came home from work. The way she'd insisted he read her 3 bedtime stories every night. Always 3, never 2 or 4. What had he done? He tried to call Amy, but of course the call wouldn't go through. He tried to send a text, but it failed to deliver. Trevor found a bench and sat down heavily. Around him, the airport bustled with life. Families reuniting, business people striding purposefully, couples embracing. He was completely alone in a country where he didn't speak the language, with barely any money, no job lined up except factory work, and no Claire. The woman who'd convinced him to abandon his family to steal his daughter's future had just walked away the moment he stopped being useful to her. Trevor pulled out his wallet and found the one photo he'd brought with him. It was from Penny's 3rd birthday party. She was covered in chocolate cake, grinning at the camera. Amy stood behind her, laughing. They'd been happy then. When had he stopped being happy with that life? His phone buzzed. For a moment his heart leaped. Maybe it was Amy, maybe somehow a message got through. But it was just a notification from his credit card company. His card had been declined when he'd tried to buy a water bottle from a vending machine earlier. He tried his other credit card at the same machine. Also declined. Trevor checked his banking app even though he knew what it would say. Still $3,247.18. But now he noticed something else. And his credit cards showed as temporarily restricted. Please contact customer service. Everything was falling apart. He had no working phone plan, frozen credit cards, a nearly empty bank account, and he was sitting alone in a Shanghai airport with nowhere to go except a factory dormitory. Trevor opened his email app, hoping it might work over the airport Wi-Fi he'd finally connected to. He typed out a desperate message to Amy. "Amy, please, something's wrong with our account. The money is gone. I don't understand what happened. Please call me, please. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. I love you. I love Penny. Please respond." He hit send and waited, staring at his phone like it might magically produce Amy's forgiveness. An hour passed. He sent another email, then another. Finally, a response came through. But it wasn't from Amy's personal email. It was from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Legal notification." Trevor's hands shook as he opened it. It was from a law firm. Bernard and Associates, family law specialists. His eyes skimmed over the formal language, trying to make sense of the legal terminology. Certain words jumped out at him like they were written in fire. Divorce petition. Full custody. Child support. Restraining order. Abandonment. Theft of marital assets. Amy was divorcing him. She was taking Penny. She was getting a restraining order to keep him away from both of them. And according to the email, she was filing a police report for theft, since he'd emptied their joint account without her permission. Trevor read it 3 times, each time hoping he'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. The message was crystal clear. Amy was done with him. He'd lost his wife, his daughter, and possibly his freedom if the theft charges went anywhere. He tried calling her again, forgetting his phone still didn't work. The call failed. He typed out another email, this one begging and pleading, promising he'd come home, promising he'd fix everything, promising he'd be better. He sent it and waited. No response came. Trevor looked at the paper Claire had given him with the factory address. He looked at his pathetic bank balance. He looked at the photo of Penny covered in birthday cake. And for the first time in his entire life, Trevor understood what it meant to have no way out. He'd made his choices. He'd betrayed everyone who loved him. And now he was sitting in an airport 12 time zones away from home, with nothing and no one. The adventure he'd imagined had turned into a nightmare in less than 2 hours. And somewhere back home, his mother Dorothy probably knew exactly what was happening to him. He could almost hear her voice. "Actions have consequences, Trevor." I sat across from Amy in my living room, watching her try to hold herself together for Penny's sake. My granddaughter was happily colouring in the corner, humming a little song she'd learned at daycare, completely unaware that her world had just been torn apart. Amy's hands trembled as she held her teacup. She hadn't taken a single sip. "Dorothy, I still can't believe this is happening," she whispered. "Part of me keeps thinking he'll call and say it was all a joke, a horrible, cruel joke." "It's not a joke, honey," I said gently but firmly. "Trevor made his choice. Now we make ours." I opened my laptop and pulled up the bank accounts. Amy leaned forward to look at the screen, her eyes still red from crying. "This is the account we opened 6 months ago," I explained, pointing to the first screen. "The one Trevor doesn't know about. It had $23,000 in it as of yesterday." Amy nodded, familiar with that account. "But I moved that money this morning," I continued, switching to a different screen, to a brand new account at First National Bank. "Only my name is on it right now, but we'll add yours this afternoon." "Why did you move it?" Amy asked. Because Trevor is desperate right now. Desperate people do desperate things. If he somehow found out about the secret account, and he might try to claim he had a right to it as your husband. This way the money is completely protected until the divorce is final. Amy's face crumpled slightly at the word divorce, but she nodded. There's more, I said. I pulled up my call log. Yesterday afternoon, my friend Patricia from Trevor's bank called me. She told me he'd transferred $41,752 out of your joint account. You knew before I did? Amy looked surprised. I'd asked Patricia to alert me if any large transactions happened. I wanted to be prepared. I met Amy's eyes. Within 2 hours of that transfer, I'd already moved your protected savings and started making other arrangements. What kind of arrangements? I took a breath. This was the part Amy might not like, but she needed to understand the full picture. I called Trevor's credit card companies and reported the cards as potentially compromised. I suggested they might have been stolen since Trevor was traveling internationally. Amy's eyes widened. Dorothy, is that legal? I didn't lie. I said the cards might have been compromised, which was true. Trevor was using them to fund his betrayal of his family. The companies made their own decisions to freeze the accounts pending verification. So Trevor has no credit cards in China? That's correct. He has whatever cash he took with him and about $3,000 in his checking account. Amy was quiet for a moment, processing this. Wait, 3,000? But he transferred over 40,000. Where did the rest go? I smiled grimly. That's the interesting part. I contacted your bank this morning and explained the situation. I told them that you, as a joint account holder, did not authorize a transfer of over $40,000 and that your husband had abandoned you and your child. What did they say? They said that technically, since Trevor's name was on the account, he had the legal right to withdraw the funds. I paused. However, when I mentioned that you'd be filing a police report for theft and that this was part of a divorce proceeding, they became more cooperative. They gave the money back. Not exactly, but they did freeze the remaining account and flag it for investigation. The bank can't return the transferred funds without a court order, but they can make Trevor's life very difficult when he tries to access anything else. I pulled up another screen showing email exchanges with Trevor's employer. I also contacted Trevor's company this morning. I spoke with someone in human resources and explained that Trevor had abandoned his family and fled the country with a co-worker. Amy's hand went to her mouth. You didn't. I absolutely did. That company has a strict ethics policy about workplace relationships and conduct. Claire and Trevor violated several policies by having an affair and then running off together. I provided them with copies of Trevor's text messages admitting to the relationship. What will happen to them? The HR representative said they'd open an immediate investigation. Both Trevor and Claire will likely be terminated for gross misconduct, which means Trevor won't have a job to come back to, and any severance or remaining pay will be held pending the investigation. Amy stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Dorothy, I had no idea you could be so ruthless, I supplied. Amy, my son abandoned his 4-year-old daughter and stole money meant to secure her future. This isn't about revenge. This is about protecting you and Penny. Penny looked up from her colouring at the sound of her name. Grandma, look. I drawed a butterfly. I smiled warmly at her. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Use lots of colours. She went back to her art, satisfied. I turned back to Amy. There's someone we need to see this afternoon. A lawyer named Mr. Bernard. He's expecting us at 2:00. I can't afford a lawyer, Dorothy. Not with everything that's happened. You're not paying for him. I am. I held up my hand as Amy started to protest. Trevor is my son and I raised him better than this. His failure is partly my responsibility. Let me help fix it. Tears welled up in Amy's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll fight for yourself and Penny. Say you won't let Trevor get away with this. I will, Amy whispered. I promise. I pulled out a folder I'd been preparing all morning. Inside were printed copies of everything we'd need. Trevor's text messages admitting he'd emptied the account and was moving to China with Claire. Bank statements showing the transfer, documentation of the joint account, records of my conversations with the bank, photos of Trevor and Claire together at the company party that I'd gotten from a co-worker's social media. Mr. Bernard will need all of this, I explained. The more documentation we have, the stronger your case. Amy looked through the papers, her expression hardening with each page. You've been collecting evidence this whole time. Since the night of that company party. I hoped I was wrong about Claire and Trevor, but I wasn't going to be unprepared if I was right. My phone buzzed. It was an email notification. I glanced at it and felt a cold satisfaction. What is it? Amy asked, noticing my expression. Email from the bank. Trevor attempted to use his credit card at a location in Shanghai about an hour ago. The charge was declined due to the fraud alert I filed. He's already in China. Looks like it. And he's already discovering that life there isn't going to be what Claire promised him. I opened my email and showed Amy the message. Then I showed her something else, a desperate email Trevor had sent to her personal account. Amy, please, something's wrong with our account. The money is gone. I don't understand what happened. Please call me. Please, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Amy read it, her jaw clenched. He made a mistake. That's what he calls abandoning his daughter and stealing our savings. A mistake. He'll send more, I predicted. They'll get more desperate, more pleading. He'll promise to change, to come home, to be better. What should I do? Nothing. Let Mr. Bernard handle all communication from now on. Trevor needs to understand that he doesn't get to sweet-talk his way out of this. Amy nodded slowly. I could see her spine straightening, her resolve hardening, the scared. Our betrayed woman from this morning was transforming into someone stronger. I need to call work, Amy said. Tell them I need a few days off to deal with a family emergency. Already done, I said. I called your supervisor this morning and explained the situation. She said to take the whole week, and if you need more time, just let her know. Amy looked at me with something like awe. How did you manage all of this in one morning? I'm 68 years old, honey. I've learned how to get things done. I closed my laptop. Now, we need to talk about practical matters. Where are you and Penny going to live? Our apartment, I guess. I can probably cover rent with my next paycheck if I'm careful. Or, I said carefully, you could both move in here. At least temporarily. This house has 3 bedrooms. Penny loves the backyard. And it would save you the rent money while we sort everything out. Dorothy, we couldn't impose. You're not imposing. You're family. And right now, family needs to stick together. I looked at Penny, still contentedly colouring. Besides, I'd love to have my granddaughter around more often. Amy was crying again, but these were different tears. Thank you for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out, I said honestly. You're stronger than you know, but you don't have to figure it out alone. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us thinking about what came next. Dorothy, Amy said quietly, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you angry at Trevor? He's your son. I considered the question carefully. Was I angry? Yes. Was I disappointed? Absolutely. Was I heartbroken that the boy I'd raised had turned into a man who could abandon his own child? I love my son, I said finally. But I don't like him very much right now. And love doesn't mean protecting someone from the consequences of their choices. Trevor is a grown man who made a grown man's decision. Now he faces grown man consequences. What if he comes back? What if he shows up and tries to see Penny? That's why we're filing a restraining order this afternoon, and why we're going for full custody with no visitation rights until Trevor can prove he's stable and trustworthy. Will a judge really grant that? With the evidence we have, Trevor abandoning his family, stealing marital assets, fleeing the country, yes, I believe a judge will grant it. My phone buzzed again. Another email from Trevor. This one even more desperate. Amy, I'm begging you, please respond. I don't know what's happening. My cards aren't working. The money is gone. Claire left me. I'm alone in Shanghai with nowhere to go. Please, I need help. I need you. I showed it to Amy. She read it and handed the phone back. He needs me, she said flatly. Where was that need when he was texting me from the airport that I always held him back? Exactly. Should I respond? I opened a new email and typed out a message, then showed it to Amy for approval. All communication regarding our marriage must go through my attorney, Bernard and Associates. Do not contact me directly again. Amy read it and nodded. Send it. I hit send and watched the message disappear into cyberspace, carrying our answer across 12 time zones to where Trevor sat in his failure. Grandma, I'm hungry, Penny announced from her corner. Let's make lunch, I said, standing up. How about grilled cheese sandwiches? With tomato soup? Penny asked hopefully. With tomato soup, I confirmed, as I walked to the kitchen with my granddaughter chattering beside me. Amy sat on the couch looking at her phone. I knew she was thinking about Trevor, about their marriage, about all the plans they'd made together. But she was also thinking about Penny, about protecting her, about building a new life. And that's exactly what we were going to do. Trevor had made his choice. Now we'd made ours. Trevor sat in a dumpy noodle shop near the Shanghai airport, his laptop open in front of him, desperately trying to connect to the free Wi-Fi. It had been 3 hours since Claire abandoned him. 3 hours of trying to figure out what to do, where to go, how to survive. The Wi-Fi password was written on a small card in Chinese characters. Trevor had to point at it and gesture until a teenage worker understood and typed it in for him. Finally, he was connected. His email inbox loaded slowly. 16 new messages. Most were junk, but 3 were from Amy's email address. His heart leapt. She'd responded. Maybe she'd forgive him. Maybe she'd help him figure out what happened to the money. He opened the first email, but his hope died instantly. It wasn't from Amy at all. It was from a law firm, Bernard and Associates, family law specialists. Trevor's mouth went dry as he read through the legal language. Words jumped out at him like punches to the gut. Petition for divorce. Irreconcilable differences. Abandonment. Full custody of minor child. Restraining order. Theft of marital assets. They were divorcing him. Amy was taking Penny away. He wouldn't be allowed near either of them. And they were calling what he did theft. No, 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 Trevor muttered, scrolling frantically through the document. It was our joint account. I had every right. But even as he said it, he knew how bad it looked. He'd emptied their savings and fled the country with another woman. Any judge would side with Amy. He opened the second email. This one was shorter, colder. All communication regarding our marriage must go through my attorney Bernard and Associates. Do not contact me directly again. Amy. Trevor felt like he'd been slapped. Amy had never spoken to him like that. Even when they fought, she was always warm, always willing to talk things through. This wasn't the Amy he knew. This was someone harder, someone done with him. The third email made his blood run cold. It was from his company's HR department. Dear Mr. Trevor Harrison, it has come to our attention that you have engaged in an inappropriate workplace relationship with co-worker Claire Chen and have abandoned your work responsibilities without proper notice. An investigation has been opened regarding violations of company ethics policies. Your employment is suspended pending the outcome of this investigation. Any remaining salary and benefits are frozen until this matter is resolved. Please contact HR immediately to discuss this situation. Trevor's hands shook as he read it twice more. Someone had reported him and Claire. Someone had told his company everything. He knew exactly who that someone was. His mother. Dorothy had done this. She'd somehow figured out what happened and had systematically destroyed everything he had left. The money disappearing from his account. His credit cards being frozen. The lawyer. His job being suspended. All of it had his mother's fingerprints all over it. Trevor wanted to scream. He wanted to throw his laptop across the noodle shop. But he couldn't afford to replace it, and he knew it. He typed out an email to Amy, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Amy, please listen to me. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but please, you have to tell me what happened to our money. I transferred it to my account and now it's gone. Someone took it. Was it you? Was it my mother? I'm stuck in Shanghai with almost nothing. Claire lied to me about everything. Her family won't help. I don't have anywhere to go. Please, I'm begging you. I made a terrible mistake. I want to come home. I want to see Penny. Please don't take my daughter away from me. I love her. I love you. Please. He hit send and waited, staring at the screen like Amy might respond instantly. Nothing. He sent another email. Amy, I'm serious. I need help. I can't get home without money. My cards aren't working. Something's wrong with all my accounts. If you took the money, I understand why. I deserved it. But please, just send me enough to buy a plane ticket home. I'll fix everything. I promise I'll be a better husband, a better father. Just please help me." Still nothing. Trevor tried calling her using an internet calling app, but the call wouldn't connect. He tried calling his mother, same thing. He tried calling his company's HR department. But it was the middle of the night back home. No one would be in the office for hours. Trevor put his head in his hands. Around him, Chinese families ate noodles and dumplings, chatting and laughing. Normal people living normal lives, and here he was, alone in a country where he didn't speak the language, with no money, no job, no wife, no daughter. The noodle shop worker came over and said something in Chinese, gesturing at Trevor's table. He'd been sitting here for over an hour and had only ordered one bowl of soup that cost him $5. "I'm sorry, I don't understand," Trevor said helplessly. The worker pointed at his bowl, then at the door. The message was clear: eat and leave or order more food. Trevor pulled out his wallet. He had about $60 in cash, American money. He had no idea how to convert it or where to go to do that. He held up a $20 bill. The worker shook his head and pointed at a sign on the wall. "UN only," it said in English. Of course they didn't take American dollars. Trevor gathered his laptop and stumbled out of the noodle shop. Outside, Shanghai stretched in every direction, a massive city of 24 million people where he knew exactly no one. The piece of paper Claire had given him was still in his pocket. The factory address written in Chinese characters he couldn't read. He showed it to a taxi driver, but when the driver quoted him a price in yuan, Trevor realized he couldn't even pay for the ride. "American dollars," he tried hopefully, showing his cash. The taxi driver laughed and drove away. Trevor started walking, pulling his suitcase behind him. He had no idea where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stand still. His phone buzzed. An email notification. His heart jumped again. But it wasn't Amy. It was his credit card company. "Dear Mr. Harrison, your account has been flagged for suspicious activity and frozen for your protection. Multiple international transaction attempts have been declined. Please call our fraud department immediately to verify your identity and recent transactions." Trevor wanted to laugh or cry. He wasn't sure which. His fraud department. Like he was the one committing fraud. Like he was the criminal. He tried calling the number listed, but it didn't work from his internet calling app. It required an actual phone connection, which he didn't have without an international plan. Everything he tried led to another dead end. Trevor found a bench and sat down heavily. It was getting dark now. The temperature was dropping. He was wearing jeans and a light jacket, not enough for a chilly Shanghai evening. He opened his laptop again and searched for cheap hostels Shanghai. The results showed places for $15 to $30 a night. He could afford maybe 2 weeks if he was extremely careful with his cash. And then what? He found a hostel that looked tolerable and started walking toward it using his phone's GPS. It was 2 miles away. His suitcase had a broken wheel, so it dragged awkwardly on the sidewalk. People stared at him as he passed. A tall white guy struggling with luggage, clearly lost and out of place. By the time Trevor reached the hostel, his arm ached from pulling the suitcase and his feet hurt. The hostel was in a narrow building squeezed between 2 restaurants. The sign was in Chinese with small English letters underneath. Budget Sleep House. Inside, a young woman at the desk greeted him in Chinese. "English?" Trevor asked hopefully. "Small English," she said, holding her fingers close together. "I need a room, 1 bed. How much?" 120 yuan 1 night, she said. "You stay? How many night?" Trevor had no idea how to answer that. "Just 1 night for now." She nodded and pushed a form toward him. He filled it out with shaking hands. "Pay now," she said. Trevor pulled out his American cash. "I only have dollars. Can you take dollars?" She looked uncertain, then called someone on her phone. After a quick conversation, she nodded. $20 and 1 night. That seemed expensive compared to the yuan price she'd quoted, but Trevor was in no position to negotiate. He handed over a 20. She gave him a key attached to a wooden block with the number 412 carved into it. The room was on the 4th floor. There was no elevator. Trevor dragged his suitcase up 4 flights of narrow stairs, sweating and miserable. Room 412 was barely bigger than a closet. It had 6 bunk beds crammed into a space meant for maybe 2. 5 of the beds were already occupied by sleeping people. The air smelled like feet and instant noodles. Trevor stood in the doorway, his dreams of mansion living and executive positions completely shattered. This was his reality now. A bunk bed in a room with 5 strangers in a country where he couldn't speak the language. He found an empty top bunk and climbed up, not even bothering to take off his shoes. His suitcase barely fit in the small locker at the foot of the bed. Trevor pulled out his phone and checked his email again. Still nothing from Amy. He tried one more time. "Amy, I'm in a hostel in Shanghai. 6 people to a room. This is what my life has become. Claire lied about everything. Her family won't help me. I have almost no money. I have nowhere to go. I was so stupid, so incredibly stupid. I threw away everything good in my life for a fantasy that lasted exactly 2 hours. Please, if you ever loved me at all, please just tell me what happened to the money. Did Mum take it? Did you? I just need to understand. And I need to figure out how to get home. I miss Penny so much. Does she ask about me? Does she know I'm gone? Please don't tell her I abandoned her. Please, I'm begging you." He sent it and lay back on the thin mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Below him, someone was snoring. Across the room, someone else was watching videos on their phone without headphones. Trevor thought about his house back home, not fancy, but clean and comfortable. His own bed, his own bathroom, Penny's room with her stuffed animals lined up on the shelf. He thought about Amy making breakfast on Sunday mornings while he and Penny watched cartoons. He thought about his mother's house where he'd grown up, where he'd always been welcomed. All of it was gone now. He'd traded it all for this bunk bed in Shanghai. Trevor's phone buzzed one more time. Another email from the lawyer. "Mr. Harrison, you are hereby notified that a restraining order has been filed against you, prohibiting contact with Amy Harrison and minor child Penny Harrison. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and prosecution. All communication must go through legal counsel. A court date has been set for custody proceedings. Your presence is not required as you have abandoned your family and left the country. Full custody will be granted to Amy Harrison by default. Sincerely, Bernard and Associates." Trevor read it 3 times, each time hoping he'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. They were taking Penny away, completely. He wouldn't even get visitation rights, and it was all his fault. He'd done this to himself, every single bit of it. Trevor finally started crying, quiet tears that he tried to muffle in his thin pillow so his roommates wouldn't hear. Somewhere back home, Penny was probably sleeping in her own bed, safe and warm, maybe cuddling her favourite stuffed bunny. And she was growing up without a father because he'd been too stupid and selfish to appreciate what he had. Trevor cried himself to sleep in that hostel bunk bed, 12 time zones away from everything that mattered. And he knew deep down that he deserved every bit of this nightmare. 2 weeks had passed since Trevor sent that text message from the airport. 2 weeks since my world fell apart and then surprisingly started coming back together. I stood at the hospital nurses' station finishing up my charts before my shift ended. My co-worker Patricia walked by and squeezed my shoulder. How are you holding up?" she asked gently. Everyone at work knew what happened. Dorothy had told my supervisor and word had spread. But instead of pity, I mostly got support. 3 different nurses had offered to babysit Penny. 2 had recommended their divorce lawyers. 1 had brought me homemade lasagna. "I'm okay," I said, and realised I actually meant it. Better than I thought I'd be. It was true the first few days had been awful. I'd cried myself to sleep, woken up crying, cried in the shower. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe sometimes. But Dorothy had been there every single moment. She'd taken care of Penny when I couldn't stop crying. She'd made sure I ate. She'd handled all the legal paperwork and phone calls. And slowly, something started changing inside me. I started remembering things about my marriage that I'd pushed aside. Trevor's constant need for reassurance, his mood swings when things didn't go his way. The way he spent money we didn't have on things he didn't need. How he'd blamed me when his boss didn't promote him, saying I'd made him too comfortable at home. How he'd resented my nursing schedule, even though my income paid most of our bills. The way he'd started coming home later and later over the past few months, claiming work was busy. How he'd password protected his phone when it used to be open. I'd ignored all the warning signs because I'd loved him, because we had Penny, because I'd believed in our vows. But Trevor had stopped believing in them long before he got on that plane to China. My phone buzzed. Another email from Trevor. He'd sent 47 emails over the past 2 weeks. I'd counted. I didn't read them anymore. They all said the same things. He was sorry. He'd made a mistake. He loved me. He loved Penny. Please help him. Please forgive him. Please send money. Mr. Bernard had told me not to respond. And I hadn't. Not once. At first it was hard. Every email made my heart hurt. But as the days passed and the emails got more desperate, more manipulative, I felt something shift. Trevor wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd gotten caught. Sorry his plan hadn't worked out. Sorry he was stuck in China with no money and no Claire. If everything had gone the way he'd planned, if Claire's family had actually been wealthy, if he'd been living in a mansion in Shanghai, would he be sending these apologetic emails? No. He'd have forgotten about Penny and me completely. I deleted the email without reading it and clocked out of my shift. Dorothy was watching Penny at her house. We'd officially moved in. 3 days ago. My landlord had been surprisingly understanding when I explained the situation and let me out of my lease early. Most of our stuff was now in Dorothy's guest room and garage. Penny loved having her own room at Grandma's house, especially because it had a window overlooking the backyard where squirrels played. I drove to Dorothy's house, feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. When I walked in, Penny ran to me with a drawing. "Mummy, look what I made!" The drawing showed 3 stick figures labelled Mummy, me, and Grandma. We were standing in front of a house with a big sun overhead. No figure labelled Daddy. Penny hadn't asked about Trevor in over a week. At first, she'd asked where Papa was every day. I'd told her Papa had to go away for work, unsure what else to say. Dorothy had been more honest. "Papa made some bad choices, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups do that." Eventually, Penny stopped asking. Kids are resilient, people said. I hoped it was true. Dorothy was in the kitchen making dinner. The smell of roasted chicken filled the house. "How was work?" she asked. "Good. Busy." I washed my hands at the sink. "Anything happened today?" Dorothy's expression shifted slightly. "Mr. Bernard called. The court date is set for next week." My stomach tightened. "Already?" "Trevor's not contesting the divorce or the custody arrangement. He can't. He abandoned his family and fled the country. The judge will grant everything we're asking for. What if he comes back? What if he shows up at the hearing? He won't. He can't afford a plane ticket. And even if he could, the restraining order means he'd be arrested the moment he tried to contact you or Penny." I sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly exhausted. This doesn't feel real. 6 months ago, I thought we had a normal marriage. Not perfect, but normal. Dorothy joined me at the table. "Amy, can I tell you something?" "Of course." I raised Trevor by myself after his father died. I worked 2 jobs to give him everything he needed. I thought I'd taught him to be strong, independent, grateful. She paused, her eyes sad. But somewhere along the way he learned the wrong lessons. He learned that the world owed him something, and that he deserved more than what he had. "That's not your fault, Dorothy." "Maybe not entirely, but I see now that I protected him too much. Every time he failed at something, I fixed it. Every time he made a bad decision, I smoothed things over." She looked at me intently. "I'm not doing that anymore. Trevor made an adult choice. He faces adult consequences." "He keeps emailing me," I said quietly, begging for help. "I know, he's emailing me too." Dorothy's jaw tightened. 43 emails in 2 weeks. I've read exactly 0 of them. "You haven't read any?" "Why would I? I know what they say. He's sorry, he made a mistake. Please send money, please forgive him." Dorothy stood and went back to the stove. If Trevor wanted my help, he shouldn't have stolen from his daughter and abandoned his family. There was a hardness in Dorothy's voice I'd never heard before. She'd always been protective of Trevor, always made excuses for him. Not anymore. "Mr. Bernard also said Trevor's company officially terminated him," Dorothy continued, "for misconduct and abandonment of duties. He has no severance, no final paycheck. They're keeping everything pending their investigation." Part of me felt guilty for the satisfaction that brought, but only a small part. "What about Claire?" I asked. "Also fired. Apparently she's back in China but won't answer Trevor's calls or emails. She wants nothing to do with him. So he's completely alone there? Yes. Dorothy pulled the chicken from the oven. Exactly where his choices led him. Penny was playing with her dolls in the living room, talking to them in her little voice, making up stories about adventures and tea parties. Has she said anything about Trevor? I asked quietly. Dorothy shook her head. Not in days. Yesterday she asked if we could get a cat. That's what's on her mind now, a cat named Sprinkles. I smiled despite everything. She's always wanted a cat. Trevor was allergic, or claimed to be. Dorothy set plates on the table. Maybe we should get her that cat. Really? Why not? This is her home now. Our home. We should make it happy. Our home, not Trevor's home. He'd given up that right. After dinner, I gave Penny a bath and put her to bed. She made me read 3 stories just like always. She kissed my cheek and snuggled her stuffed bunny. Mummy, she said sleepily. Yes, baby? I love living at Grandma's house. Me too, sweet pea. Are we going to stay here forever? For a while, yes. Is that okay? Yeah. Grandma makes good cookies. And she lets me help. Penny yawned. And we might get a cat named Sprinkles. I laughed softly. We might. Good night, Penny. Night, Mummy. I kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked. How she liked it. Downstairs, Dorothy was washing dishes. I joined her, drying while she washed. She's happy, I said. That's what matters. You matter too, Amy. How are you really doing? I thought about the question honestly. I'm angry, I'm hurt, but I'm also relieved? Relieved? I didn't realize how much stress Trevor caused until he was gone. I don't have to worry about his moods anymore. Or whether he's spending money we don't have. Or if he's actually working late or doing something else. Dorothy nodded. A bad marriage is worse than no marriage. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed or ignored. Don't blame yourself for believing in your vows. Trevor's the one who broke them. My phone buzzed again. Another email from Trevor. This time I opened it just to see. Amy, I'm working at an electronics factory now. 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. I make barely enough to cover the hostel and food. I share a room with 5 other people. I sleep on a bunk bed. This is my life now. Because I was stupid and selfish and threw away everything good. I know you won't respond. I know you hate me, but please tell Penny I love her. Tell her Papa made terrible mistakes, but I think about her every day. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want her to know she was loved, that she is loved. I'm so sorry, Amy, for everything. I read it twice, then showed it to Dorothy. She read it without expression, then handed the phone back. What do you feel when you read that? Sad, a little bit guilty, but mostly just empty, like it doesn't matter anymore. Because it doesn't, Dorothy said gently. Trevor had a family who loved him, a wife who supported him, a daughter who adored him, and he traded it all for a fantasy with a woman who abandoned him the second he stopped being useful. Should I respond? Tell him about Penny? Do you think Penny needs to know her father is suffering in China? That he's sorry? Will that help her? I thought about my daughter upstairs, sleeping peacefully with her stuffed bunny. Happy, secure, not asking about Trevor anymore. No, I said, it won't help her at all. Then don't respond. Let Mr. Bernard handle everything from now on. I deleted the email and put my phone away. Dorothy finished the dishes and made us both tea. We sat in her living room, comfortable and quiet. Amy, I need to tell you something, Dorothy said after a while. What is it? The money from your secret account, plus what I've saved over the years. It's enough for a down payment on a house. I stared at her. Dorothy, I can't take your savings. You're not taking it. I'm investing it in my granddaughter's future and yours. She pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed. I've been looking at houses, 3 bedrooms, good school district, nice neighborhood. There's one I really like. I want you and Penny to go look at it with me this weekend. A house? But I can't afford a mortgage. The 3 of us can. If we live together, share expenses, we can afford it easily. You work days, I'm retired, and can watch Penny. We're already doing it now. Why not make it permanent? I felt tears building. You'd really do that? Buy a house with me? Amy, you're the daughter I never had. Penny is my world. Why wouldn't I want to build a life with you both? The tears fell then, but they weren't sad tears. They were grateful tears. Hopeful tears. Okay, I whispered. Let's look at houses. Dorothy smiled and squeezed my hand. Trevor thought he was leaving you with nothing. Instead, he freed you to build something better. My phone buzzed one more time. Another email from Trevor. I didn't even look at it. Whatever he had to say didn't matter anymore. I was done looking backward. It was time to look forward. To the court date that would officially end my marriage. To the house Dorothy and I would look at this weekend. To the life Penny and I were building with the strongest woman I had ever known. Trevor had made his choice. Now I'd made mine. 3 months later, I stood on the front porch of our new house, watching Penny chase Sprinkles the cat around the backyard. The cat was a fluffy orange tabby who'd stolen all our hearts the moment we saw her at the shelter. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a yard with an old oak tree perfect for climbing when Penny got older. Dorothy and I had closed on it last month, both our names on the deed. My bedroom was painted a soft blue. Your Penny's was lavender with white stars on the ceiling that glowed at night. Dorothy's room overlooked the garden she'd already started planning. This was home. Real home. Not the apartment I'd shared with Trevor where I'd always felt like I was walking on eggshells. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. I'd stood in that courtroom with Mr. Bernard beside me and Dorothy in the gallery behind me. Trevor hadn't shown up, hadn't even sent a lawyer. The judge had granted everything we asked for. Full custody of Penny. No visitation rights for Trevor until he could prove stability, which would require him to return to the country, maintain steady employment for at least a year, complete therapy, and pay 6 months of back child support. In other words, probably never. My phone sat on the porch railing. Trevor still sent emails occasionally, though they'd slowed down. Maybe once a week now instead of daily. I'd read the last one, just yesterday. Amy, I've been in Shanghai for 3 months now. I work at the factory, live in the hostel, eat cheap noodles every day. I've lost 20 pounds. I barely sleep. Every day I wake up and remember what I threw away. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know something. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Penny both. I was too stupid to see it until I lost everything. I'm trying to save money to come home, but it'll take at least a year, maybe more. By then, Penny won't even remember me. Maybe that's better. Maybe she's better off without a father who abandoned her. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Every single day, I'm sorry. I hope you're happy, Amy. You deserve happiness. You deserved better than me. Trevor. I'd read it and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction at his suffering. Just emptiness where he used to be. Dorothy stepped out onto the porch with 2 glasses of lemonade. Penny's having the time of her life out there. She is, I agreed, taking the glass. Thank you for everything. I don't say it enough. You don't need to say it at all. Dorothy sat in the rocking chair next to mine. This is what family does. In the backyard, Penny had given up chasing the cat and was now making a flower crown from dandelions. She was singing to herself, completely content. She asked about Trevor this morning, I said quietly. Dorothy looked at me sharply. What did she say? She asked if Papa was ever coming back. First time she's mentioned him in weeks. What did you tell her? The truth. That Papa made choices that took him far away and we don't know if he'll come back. How did she take it? She said, okay, and asked if we could have pancakes for breakfast. I smiled sadly. Kids are resilient. More than adults sometimes, Dorothy agreed. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting another email from Trevor, but it wasn't from Trevor. It was from my supervisor at the hospital. Amy, the head nurse, position in pediatrics, just opened up. I immediately thought of you. It's more money, better hours, day shift only. Interested? Monica. I read it twice, my heart picking up speed. The head nurse position. I'd wanted that job for years, but it never seemed like the right time. Or Trevor had always said my schedule was already crazy enough without taking on more responsibility. But Trevor wasn't here to say anything anymore. What is it? Dorothy asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the message. Dorothy's face broke into a huge smile. Amy, that's wonderful. Are you going to apply? I want to. But it's more responsibility and with Penny. Penny has me, Dorothy interrupted, and it's day shift only, which means you'd be home for dinner every night. No more overnight shifts. You really think I should do it? I think you should stop asking permission to live your life. Dorothy's voice was gentle but firm. Trevor made you small, Amy. He made you doubt yourself, but you're capable of amazing things. Apply for that job. I looked at my phone, at the message, at the opportunity sitting right in front of me. Then I typed out a response. Monica, I'm very interested. When can we talk about it? Amy, I hit send before I could second guess myself. There, Dorothy said with satisfaction. That's my girl. A car pulled into the driveway. Mr. Bernard, our lawyer. He'd called this morning saying he needed to drop off some final paperwork. I went to meet him, Dorothy following behind. Mr. Bernard was a kind man in his 60s with grey hair and warm eyes. He'd handled everything with such care and professionalism. Ladies, he greeted us, pulling a folder from his briefcase. I have the final divorce decree, all signed and official. And one more thing. He handed me a document I didn't recognize. What's this? I asked. A legal notice from Trevor's former employer. They've completed their investigation into his conduct. They found evidence of misuse of company resources, falsified expense reports, and the inappropriate relationship with Claire Chen. They're not pressing criminal charges, but they are pursuing a civil lawsuit to recover funds. I stared at the document. What does this mean? It means Trevor owes his former company approximately $18,000. They'll garnish any wages he earns, any bank accounts he has until the debt is paid. Dorothy raised her eyebrows. So even when he does save money to come home, they'll take it. Essentially, yes. Mr. Bernard looked at me carefully. How do you feel about that? How did I feel? Trevor was trapped in China working a terrible job, living in a hostel, now owing money he'd probably never be able to pay back. And I waited for guilt, for sympathy, for the urge to help him. It didn't come. I feel nothing, I said honestly. He made his choices. These are his consequences. Mr. Bernard nodded approvingly. Good. You've come a long way, Amy. When I first met you 3 months ago, you could barely say his name without crying. Now look at you. New house, new opportunities, raising a happy daughter. I had help, I said, glancing at Dorothy. You had support, Mr. Bernard corrected, but you did the hard work yourself. You should be proud. After he left, I stood in my new living room, looking around at the life we'd built. Pictures of Penny on the walls, Dorothy's knitting basket in the corner, my nursing textbooks on the shelf, no pictures of Trevor. We'd taken them all down. Penny ran inside, breathless and happy. Mummy, can Sprinkles sleep in my room tonight? If she wants to, I said, scooping her up. Did you have fun playing? So much fun. Grandma, did you see me catch Sprinkles? I did, sweetheart. You were very fast. Penny wiggled down and ran to wash her hands for dinner. Dorothy and I moved to the kitchen. She'd made pot roast, Penny's favourite. Dorothy, I said as we set the table, do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Cutting Trevor off completely? Dorothy paused, considering the question seriously. I think about it sometimes. He's my son. Part of me will always love him, even when I don't like him very much. But he had every opportunity to make different choices. He could have talked to me when he was unhappy in his marriage. He could have gotten counselling. He could have been honest with you instead of sneaking around with Claire. Dorothy set down the plates. Instead, he chose to abandon his 4-year-old daughter and steal money meant for her future. Those aren't the actions of someone who deserves my protection anymore. What if he comes back someday, really changes? If he does the work, proves he's stable, becomes the father Penny deserves, then we'll revisit the situation. But that's years away, if it happens at all. Dorothy met my eyes. Right now, our job is to protect Penny and help you build the life you deserve. Trevor isn't part of that equation. Penny ran back in, her hands clean. I'm hungry. We sat down to dinner together, the 3 of us. Penny chatted about her day at preschool, about Sprinkles, about the ladybug she'd found in the garden. She was happy. She's thriving. She had a mother who loved her, a grandmother who adored her, a stable home, and a cat named Sprinkles. She didn't need Trevor. Maybe she never really had. After dinner, after Penny was in bed, I sat on the back porch with my laptop. Dorothy had gone to her book club, and I had the house to myself for an hour. I opened my email. One new message from Trevor. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I clicked it. Amy, I heard about the lawsuit from my old company. They're taking everything I earn. I'll never be able to save enough to come home now. I'll probably be stuck in China for years, maybe forever. I know you don't care. I know I deserve this, but I need to say one more thing. Thank you for being a good mother to Penny. Thank you for protecting her when I failed her. Tell her Papa loved her. Even though I made terrible mistakes, I won't email anymore. There's no point. Take care of yourself, Amy. Goodbye. I read it 3 times. Then I hit delete. I opened a new email and addressed it to my supervisor, Monica. Monica, I'd love to discuss the head nurse position. I'm ready for this next step in my career. Thank you for thinking of me. When can we meet? Amy. I sent it and closed my laptop. Trevor was my past. The job, this house, Penny, Dorothy. They were my future. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I found a delivery person with a large box. Amy Harrison? He asked. That's me. He handed me the box and left. I carried it inside, curious. The return address was from my parents in Florida. I'd told them about the divorce, about everything. They'd been supportive but distant, as always. We'd never been particularly close. I opened the box and found a note on top. Amy, we're sorry we couldn't be there for you during this difficult time. We know we haven't been the most involved parents or grandparents. We'd like to change that. Here's a little something for Penny, and we'd love to come visit next month if that works for you. We're proud of how strong you've been. Love, Mum and Dad. Underneath the note was a beautiful wooden dollhouse, hand-painted and clearly expensive, and a check for $5,000. I sat down on the floor, staring at the check. My parents had never been generous with money. They'd always said I needed to make my own way in life, but here they were reaching out, trying to help. Maybe good things did come from bad situations. I texted my mum. Got the package. And thank you so much. Penny will love the dollhouse. Please come visit next month. We have plenty of room. She responded immediately. We'll be there. We love you, sweetheart. When Dorothy got home from book club, I showed her everything. The email from Trevor, the package from my parents, the response from my supervisor about the job interview. Dorothy listened to it all, then pulled me into a hug. You see, she said, when you clear out the wrong people, you make room for the right ones. Trevor was the wrong person. Trevor was the wrong person for you to build a life with. He needed someone to prop up his ego and ignore his flaws. You needed a partner who saw your strength and celebrated it. You think I'll find that someday? A real partner? Dorothy smiled. Maybe, when you're ready. But right now you don't need anyone. You're doing just fine on your own. She was right. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly independent, making my own decisions, building my own future, and it felt incredible. 6 months after that, I stood in the hospital conference room wearing my new head nurse uniform. My team sat around the table looking at me expectantly. Okay, everyone, I said confidently. Let's talk about the new patient protocols. I'd gotten the job. I was good at it. My team respected me. My schedule was perfect for Penny. Everything was falling into place. Trevor had emailed one more time 3 months ago. A short message saying he'd gotten a slightly better job teaching English at a language school. He was still in Shanghai, still struggling, still alone. I'd read it and felt only distant pity, like I might feel for a stranger going through hard times. Then I deleted it and never heard from him again. Penny was 5 now. She barely remembered Trevor. When she thought about family, she thought about me and Dorothy and Sprinkles the cat. We were enough. We were everything. Dorothy had started dating someone, a widower from her book club named Walter. He was kind and funny and treated both Penny and me with respect. Life moved forward. It healed. It got better. One evening, almost a year after Trevor had sent that text from the airport, I sat on our porch watching the sunset. Penny was inside helping Dorothy make cookies. Their laughter floated through the open window. I thought about where I'd been a year ago. Broken, betrayed, terrified of the future. And I thought about where I was now. Strong, independent, building a beautiful life. Trevor had thought he was destroying me when he emptied that bank account and ran off to China. Instead, he'd set me free. Free to discover who I really was. Free to build the life I actually wanted. Free to raise Penny in a home filled with love and stability. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing. Sometimes losing everything means you get the chance to rebuild exactly the way you want. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up giving you the greatest gift, the gift of finding out just how strong you really are. I pulled out my phone and opened my email one last time. No new messages from Trevor. Good. I deleted his email address from my contacts. Then I opened a new message to my parents, confirming their visit next month. The past was gone. The future was bright, and I was ready for all of it. Thank you for reading this story. If this story touched your heart or inspired you in any way, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a betrayal that ended up leading you to something better? Have you discovered strength you didn't know you had? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional journey. We share real stories about real people overcoming incredible challenges. Remember, sometimes the end of one chapter is just the beginning of something even better. You're stronger than you think, and you deserve people who see your worth. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next story.